Okay.
For backup, because now I'm terribly paranoid. It's real.
Oh,
You don't have to worry about
locally,
anything. It's just, yeah.
You are?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I need to sync it. I just, for my sake, I am just worried because I don't want to like waste your time. And yeah, we're really, really grateful to have you on the show. And I am super excited about this.
Yeah.
So
I know we've been talking for a while, so it's great to get you on here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. Or nerve-eyed,
also-
I think is the word. Nervous.
Nerve-eyed.
Nerve-eyed. Okay. Also, I love
like
that you
that.
dropped your LinkedIn for social media. You're like, that's the only place that I want to connect.
It's the only social media that I had. I'm on Instagram
Okay.
now, but I haven't been on like actual social media since like college, like over a decade.
It's okay. LinkedIn is trying to steal all the other things from all the other social medias anyway. So
I mean, it's not a social media. I just feel like it's just a real choice.
it's business social media. Different.
Yeah.
It worked for me.
It's like you wanted all the baggage of people. You know how people, when they say networking and it just feels like a lot of baggage, you're like, you wanted that in your social platform, right? Like, yeah.
I mean, I get
like
it,
starting
just
with
as
baggage.
many people soliciting stuff on there as I do on all the other shows. So,
Okay. All right. Cool. Here we go.
You're listening to The Janchi Show, hosted by 3 Korean American adoptees diving headfirst into what it means to be adopted, Korean American, and more. And now, here's your hosts, Nathan, Patrick, and KJ.
What up, everybody? Welcome back to the Janchi Show. It's your boys, KJ, Nathan, Patrick. How we feeling, fellas?
We feeling fine.
dandy. Happy
Fine and
Lunar New
dandy.
Year, guys.
Fine. Oh yeah, happy
But
Salah.
technically, the day that we are doing this is Happy New Year.
Say hey, Bokmane, 받으세요.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So yesterday, the day that you're listening to it, if you're listening when the episode dropped, was official Lunar New Year day. But at least in Korea, they celebrate 3 days. So you're in day 3 of your celebration. Go find yourself some tteokguk, eat some kimchi. I don't know. Just bow to someone with a Venmo QR code on the back of your head.
I actually
need
saw
that extra.
that. Somebody
Oh.
did that. Somebody put some QR codes on some red envelopes. So I thought that was pretty clever.
That
Smart,
is really
smart,
funny.
smart.
Yeah, right?
I need those
Um,
extra 3 days or those extra 2 to be able to celebrate appropriately. I don't have time today.
Patrick's doing like a solo
yesterday.
crawl.
Yeah, a crawl
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, a 3-day crawl. It's fine.
Before we get into the interview, I did just want to say really quickly that my Indiana group went to a Lunar New Year celebration somewhere here in Indy.
Heyo.
That was really fun. And,
That's awesome.
One of the elders from one of the oldest Chinese American Association here in Indianapolis got up and spoke and was just like welcoming everyone. And then after that, I went up and talked to him because I had taken some flyers for the Adoptee Citizenship Act petition because I was like, oh, this will be a good place to
Look at
to
your boy
talk to people about-
networking. Nice.
to market
like,
this.
Hey, here's a great New Year's resolution. Get this passed.
Exactly. But I went up and spoke with him. Super kind gentleman. His name is Benny. But when I told him I was an adoptee, he immediately stopped me and hugged me. And I was
Whoa.
like,
Wow.
it was
You were like,
really,
sir,
really...
there's a pandemic happening. Please, 6 feet away.
Sir, put your mask back up. But no, it was really like sweet and touching, but also it made me after the fact, it made me think about how it's so important for us to be continuing to talk with people who do not share this experience from the countries of origin that we come from, and making sure that we're making inroads and connecting with our I don't know what I'm saying.
Allies.
Yeah, connecting with our allies, but also how I think that there's this disconnect between our allies going out of the way to support us and knowing that's part of the story. And so I think something I was really appreciative of was not only the hug, but also it made me think about the way that the allies open their doors to us, and also how this
And
year
their
being the
arms.
year of the tiger, Yeah, exactly. Their arms. But this year being the year of the water tiger specifically,
Ooh.
um, I think they talked about the water tiger being less aggressive, but more introspective and open to new things. I think is how I heard him describe it at the Lunar New Year celebration. So I don't know. I just wanted to share that because I thought it was both a touching moment, but also made me really think about the dynamic between the adoptee community and the people who come from the countries of origins that we all come from, and how those relationships like interact and intersect. And I feel like as part of the new year, I thought it was for me a great way to start off because it was like not only making me think about that, but making me also feel a little bit more connected. And I know for adoptees, Lunar New Year is not something that everybody chooses to celebrate or even feels comfortable celebrating. And I feel like it's important to hold that with a lot of care and give that a lot of space too. And I felt like it was just weird, but also beautiful to sit in that kind of uncomfort, but also comfort. I don't know. So that's what I wanted to share.
Coming from you too, Patrick. You're a hugger.
I know, it caught me off guard. I wasn't ready for it. I was like, he just goes, shit. For the listener, I did a big hug motion.
Big old bear hug.
And it was, I don't know. It was like, at first, it was like when I first got my hair cut by the Korean Adoptee who cuts my hair now. But then it really, like in that moment, I never thought about that dynamic. But in this moment, I really thought about it, maybe because he's Chinese and I'm Korean. That makes it a little bit different. And, some of the conversation we shared was interesting. His thoughts about adoption. And I'm not going to get into that now, but I just thought that dynamic was interesting as we move into this new year, thinking about that.
Yeah. I mean, I can't even think if I said something like I was just talking to somebody and told them that I was adopted and then they hugged me because of it. I think that would definitely throw me off guard as well. So, but at the same time would be comforting in knowing that in a way they're just, saying, I see you and I hear you and, here's a hug.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
maybe,
I think
and maybe COVID.
Yikes. I see you, I hear you, here is virus. That
Here's a virus, but we'll also hand out 4 at-home tests for you when you leave.
No, so I mean, yeah, I think it certainly is different when you are meeting someone who is from the same region of the world as you, but like they're not from your same country,
Right.
Because adoption is such a global enterprise now, and because it is in the consciousness of so many people around the world, then there are lots of different takes around it. And so, like, I don't know, we were, as you guys know, for the listeners, we were just dreaming about what we want the Janchi Show to be. And one of the things that I hope for people who listen to the show and who continue to listen is I hope that you become fearless in these Asian spaces and in spaces that you find yourself about your adoptee identity. If that's one of the identities that you hold, I realize not all of our listeners are adoptees, but being fearless about your adoptee identity, I think is really important because just realistically, like probably Asian Americans, whatever intersection Asian you are, they're going to be like, well, this is where our people come to hang out, and not have the maybe self-awareness to realize that, like, for adoptees, those spaces can be really hard to find, can be really intimidating, can be this, that, or the other. But as adoptees, if we're really fearless in being there and being like, look, I'm adopted, but I'm here, then like even if you meet another Asian American who's like, why aren't you like, meet one who's particularly abrasive and greets you with fists and face slaps instead of hugs, like you can just brush yourself off and be like, no, this is regardless, this is who I am. I'm here now, and I'm doing all that I can to work together to continue to grow this greater sense of community and fellowship in the Asian diaspora, and however that works out. So yeah, I think just that sense of fearlessness is really important moving ahead, to begin to fight for a greater awareness of our existence and how to interact with us and all those things. Not that it's like all that hard, but I think that like I don't find that we're particularly difficult people, but I do think that there is the disconnect that we feel as adoptees to Asian communities, I think exists like the other direction as well.
Sure.
And so just being fearless about who you are and being kind and open and like just here to make friends and build relationships is so important. So I'm glad you did that, man. I'm glad you had that experience and that it was received well.
Yeah,
And I'm
thanks.
excited for
I like
what
that-
comes out of that.
But what you said too. I mean, I agree that we're not difficult to talk to, but
I mean,
but
I
we're
am. I'm kind of the
well,
worst.
some of us are maybe.
Notoriously the worst
KJ
to talk
maybe.
to.
Notoriously.
Everyone else is really easy.
Infamously.
But the fact that people do not know, our backstory, they don't know our identity, they don't know who we are, and so in a way, that's what's difficult is they don't know, and the only way of knowing is by talking with us, or being open, or listening to us, or sharing our show, or whatever you need to do
Yeah,
to.
by wearing a shirt that says
Sorry,
I'm
that
adopted.
was just a little,
I'm
yeah.
a
Or yeah,
Janchi
wearing a
person.
shirt that says adopted on it, but branding. Hey, buy a shirt. No, the point is that once they do find out, like. With Patrick, they gave him a hug. It was like that right there is like acknowledgement. And so I think, I think more and more of that is happening. And I think more awareness, more of this movement of support is happening. And I think we should just keep that wave going, keep the support, keep listening, keep asking questions, and go from there.
Yeah, and I honestly, I think I appreciate both of what you said, and I think it's a really good segue into our interview today. We were very fortunate and privileged to have Amanda Paul on the show, and I'm not going to spoil anything about really what we talk about, but we have a really deep, impactful conversation about being fearless in our identities, but also what it takes to find that, what it takes to get to that point, how we navigate our journeys to become fearless and to live into and lean into those identities. And Amanda shares so much. I feel like the past two guests that we've had have provided us with a lot of new language.
Oh man,
and
they've
I think
been so generous with their stories.
absolutely. And we're definitely going to get into that here. So without further ado, we're going to kick it over to the interview with Amanda Paul.
Let's go.
Hey.
Welcome back, everyone, to the Janchi Show. We are here with the one and only Amanda Paul. Amanda, thank you so much for coming on the show. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling grateful to be here and nervited, as as I just shared. Something
Nervited.
offered.
Nice.
Yeah, nervous, excited.
That is a great portmanteau of the English language. Yeah, well, we're excited to have you. We would like you to start. We'd like to start the interview off the way that we do with all of our interviews, and invite you to share your adoption story in as much or as little detail as you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. So I'll start with what I know from my adoption files. So I was born in Pyeongtaek, South Korea in 1990, and was transferred to what is now known as the Eastern Social Welfare Society up in Seoul. And I'm kind of guessing at the timeline a little bit, but I believe that was about a few days after I was born. And then within a couple of weeks, I was sent to live with a foster family. And then at 5 months old, I was taken to Chicago, where I met my parents for the first time. 5 months later, I became a sister for the first time when my brother was born. So my parents have one biological child. And I was raised by a white, Catholic, working class, cishet couple on the northwest side of Chicago, in a pretty diverse neighborhood. It was very Polish, very Puerto Rican, lots of South American families, actually, lots and lots of immigrant families. I mean, I was still the only Korean or East Asian base I ever saw around. So I was raised in the city, but I grew up in, or just kind of like circulated almost exclusively white spaces. I'm the only person of color that my parents have ever, in my lifetime at least, had a meaningful relationship with. So all of their friends, all of our extended family members are all white. And I really had no racial mirrors growing up. And I gravitated towards mostly white friend groups too for a really long time. And Korean culture was just also not really present, let alone celebrated in my house. And I really didn't have any relationships with other adoptees either until last year. But it was, obviously not ever a secret that I was adopted. It would be really entertaining to see them try to hide that.
You're like, wait, how did this happen? I don't understand.
No, it's fine. Yeah. But yeah, but the story that I was told too, of course, was, that someone loved me so much that they had to give me away. And people
Ugh.
just like out in public would approach my family and ask if they could touch me. I mean, if I was lucky, they would ask. They would ask my parents if I was their real kid, or more frequently, or for me, at least in my memory, it seemed like more frequently I was asked, like, are those people your real parents? I was stared at a lot and like pointed at by adults. And my parents' reactions to those things, I think, were not super helpful for anyone involved. Like, definitely not helpful for me and kind of harmful. And definitely didn't invite like any conversation around adoption. And then at home, privately, I think the conversation around adoption was not really about adoption. Like my mom, I can remember my mom would ask me, like if I'd ever thought about my birth mother, but I knew that there was like a right answer to that or an expected answer to that because it was also framed in, like, do you think about your birth mother, but you're happy here, right? And I'm a good mom, right? And like you love us. And there was a lot of that kind of like ownership language, like, will you belong to us? Kind of in a way that didn't really feel like belonging to me, I think. And I can remember like tiny me having to kind of comfort her through some of those conversations. And that has definitely been a pattern in my life. So I have a very boundaried relationship with my parents right now. And that's definitely intentional for me. My earliest memories of witnessing and experiencing, I think, racism and xenophobia and so much homophobia, ableism, classism, all the things, and just generally a lot of emotional violence, all of those things I experienced first from my family. I was told to ignore a lot of things, like things that I was experiencing at school. And my parents took a very definitely color evasive and authoritarian approach, I think, to raising me and kind of to our relationship. So growing up, I really felt like I didn't have a lot of support from my parents or in any adult. It just didn't feel safe. And I learned, I think, at a relatively young age that I just couldn't really trust them to emotionally support me. And without having that language, it was just kind of something that I felt. And so I stopped confiding in them and stopped asking for help or asking for anything really. And I just felt like I was experiencing this abandonment kind of over and over and over again. So in my child brain, like if the people responsible for caring for me were not listening and dismissing me and minimizing painful things that I was experiencing, I just didn't really have a reason to believe that anyone else would be supportive at that point. And I really internalized that, I think, that idea of like I shouldn't expect anything from anyone else. And I think I also kind of felt like I didn't deserve anything from anyone else. And I really became really hyper independent in a way that I think was externally viewed as like, wow, look how well adjusted and self-sufficient and high achieving Amanda is, when I was just like trying to survive really. And that really set me up for decades of just feeling really lonely and just so much fear and like rage, honestly, from feeling so isolated for so long, I think, just in a really unsustainable way. And I also don't want to sound like I think my childhood was just like a complete tragedy by any means. Like I also had an immense amount of privilege that I'm very aware of. But unpacking all of this stuff, all of my adoption trauma, has kind of been one of my COVID projects, I guess. So
All right.
Yeah. Seems to be a trend. Yes.
I feel like the Janchi Show
Uh-huh,
is like all of our COVID projects. So
Exactly. I think we've had a lot of people say that they've reflected a lot over this past few years. So,
And I love that. And that's been super validating for me too. Like, oh, we're all going through this thing right now. And like, I wonder what that is, like that it's happening right now at this time. But so it's been a pretty solid year for me working through this for myself, and it still feels very new. And there's, just through COVID in general, absolutely been a lot of loss and pain and just isolation from that, just like literally being physically isolated. But spending so much time at home, I think for me has also forced me to just be with my thoughts a lot, and kind of just like be comfortable with silence. And that's what it's been filled with. And it's also been really supportive of my healing, I think, in that way. And it's allowed me to really intentionally shift who I surround myself with, and where I spend my time and energy. And this year, I'm really trying to live into my values right now. And that has meant that some folks have been invited to participate in my life in a different way. And for some folks, that means that they're participating less. And I just realized last year that family has always been chosen for me, but I was never the one doing the choosing. So like, no wonder that I felt so alone and unsafe and all of these things. And I feel very much in control of that now, or like I'm starting to be able to do that. Like I have boundaries now. I know what boundaries are, and that's a new thing. And that's been super challenging and painful. And has, I think, created the circumstances for me to feel free to kind of like relearn myself now and give myself permission to just be myself, and kind of like express myself in the ways that feel natural to me, instead of continuing to try to actively suppress things about myself that felt, I don't know, unacceptable, I guess. So it's really been a gift. I mean, and then this identity work has led to so many other things kind of like trickling down. Like it is definitely what led me to learn just last year that I'm autistic. So it's really been like an incremental kind of like unlocking of pieces of myself, in a really exciting way. And just like that piece even has just provided so much more context to past experiences. I'm thinking about things totally differently now. I think I really had a strong questioning and creative nature, and a pretty strong connectedness to my intuition as a child that I was very aware of as a child. And they were just kind of, those things were kind of shamed out of me. So I feel like I'm coming back to that kind of self-awareness.
Speaking of your childhood, when you were talking about that a little bit about awareness and realizing those things, did you at any point, when you were feeling lonely and feeling more separated from like the Korean culture, did you try to look for any culture? Did you look for anything of I don't know.
Nathan's like, did you maybe try specifically looking in an encyclopedia? Did you?
Because when I was growing up, there was nothing. So
he's an encyclopedia guy.
Yeah, I had nothing other than an encyclopedia.
Did you use
but I was
a thing
also in a
called a
very small
book?
town. You're in Chicago. I was just curious if there was any need or feeling that, oh, maybe I can find a group or some other people to connect with.
A small enclave of Koreans.
As a kid, that just was not even a thought for me. I like pretty actively distanced myself from anything having to do with adoption, definitely anything that even had like a whiff of Asianness to it. Like I really, which is just like, how?
Yeah.
You were like, go Poland.
I did the exact same thing.
No, I think everyone
did the exact same thing.
Yeah.
Oh, I did the opposite, like deeply the opposite.
No,
thing.
I
was
literally
like, yeah, I'm
ran
going.
away.
I don't care where it's from. Is it from China? Dibs. Is it from Vietnam? Dibs. Is it from Russia? Dibs. I want all of it. Give me all of it.
I love that. And I mean, I think it's just, like I looked in the mirror and that was literally the only interaction that I had with a Korean face. Like there was, not, I mean, and it's it's interesting because I've heard other adoptees too talk about like having wanted to be white. And I don't remember that for myself, but I just remember thinking like I don't exist anywhere else. Like I'm an alien. I don't know, but I don't exist anywhere else. And so I just didn't want to be me, I think. Not that I like wanted to be white, but I, yeah, definitely avoided even like eating anything. Not that my parents were cooking Asian food, but like bringing anything Asian to school. I wouldn't use chopsticks. Like I didn't listen to like Asian music or consume any kind of content. I just like wanted to be quote unquote American. Having that very narrow view of what an American was at that point.
Yeah. I mean, I just forgot, honestly. It wasn't necessarily that I wanted to be white. I would just forget
You just
that I was
forgot?
Asian. Yeah, I would literally
Wow.
forget I was Asian until I'd walk past a mirror or something.
Yeah, that's wild.
I get that. I think
Right?
I definitely was one of the people who wanted to be white. I remember vividly, like by my bedside when you'd kneel down and pray at night, like praying to God about that. But I think something I've never thought about, what you just said, or what you just touched upon, of not wanting to be white, but wanting to just be somebody else. I've never thought about it that way, but 100% that's what I was doing, because even when I got into like college and like became an adult, I think I've always been chasing another life, just not who I am currently. And while I think a lot of that goes back to the internalized whiteness of growing up in a predominantly white community in that culture, I do think it was not so much I wanted to change me so much as I didn't want to be me at that point in time. So I appreciate you saying that, because I think it's so simple. It's right there, but I don't think I'd really thought about it in that way either. Like literally leaving my body and inhabiting something else. So thank you for making me think about that. You made me think a lot.
Well, yeah,
you made
I
me think
mean-
about a lot of things, actually, with what you shared. So I want to thank you for sharing, because multiple things that I was thinking about just resonate with my own story, your story, and just thinking about things that I haven't really thought about before in a long time, like suppressed thoughts. Like when you talked about not wanting to be touched, or like when people would come up and touch you, like people would always come up to me and want to touch my hair. And I hated that, because it was thick and it
Really?
was straight, and people would always do that. And I think at one point I would just like, it happened so often that I just went with it. But I really, really, really hated that. And I never told my parents, like I never told anybody that I didn't like it, because then that's like, oh, well, now he's the complainer. He just whines about people touching his hair. And it's just like, well, no, I just like, it's just something deeply like unsettling about it, I think. And just like, and commodified in that way. It's like, I'm not a person, like I'm a pet, almost. So
Well, you're just it's just like intrinsically othering.
Yeah, exactly,
Right? Because
exactly.
everyone knows, like when people are reaching out to you like you're an
Exactly.
alien to touch some feature that they don't have, they're like, they're literally saying through their actions, which as we all know, speak louder than words, you are other, right? And I think like even to your point of like, I just want to be American. Like I never thought consciously, I wish I was a white person, but I did consciously choose to focus like in high school. I was like, well, I can't be fully Korean, or I can't, be whatever my childish dreams would allow me to be. So I'm going to focus on the things that I can be. And that's a good part of my white family. That's a good Christian, a good Texan, like all of these things that are just coding for whiteness. You know what I mean? Because no one was explicitly talking about race, and no one was explicitly talking about what it means to be a person of color. Generally, no one was explicitly talking about it, but in some communities, maybe there were more explicit talks about that stuff, and so yeah, I just think it's so interesting, and something that I think we often find is how people either lean into or bounce back from like proximity to whiteness, and I think that just personally, I think that's extra intersectional when you consider that we Korean adoptees are also East Asians. And so like just broadly speaking, the East Asian proximity to whiteness is, in question maybe these days, but generally for most of our lifetimes has been like pretty close.
Well, been
And so-
presented to us as like
Right, yeah, as
adjacent,
definitely
with,
adjacent, yeah.
exactly.
So yeah, I don't know. I think that that's so interesting. So Amanda, listening to your story, I mean, I'm hearing all of these things around setting up boundaries and keeping people at an arm's length and all these things. And I know that there's a shift that happens, I guess, just in COVID, around some of your identity work and maybe resetting your boundaries or learning to put them up, whichever that one is. But what's happened between the growing up times and the COVID times? Like, I don't know. Did you just continue to like kind of keep people at arm's length? Like, what was your way of navigating the world?
I guess I still feel
I guess
like
like
I'm
relationally.
I still feel like I'm in the growing up times.
All right.
And like when I talk about boundaries, I just really didn't have them relationally for up until like last year. Boundaries in my family, like without calling them boundaries, have, in my experience, been treated as like, well, if you're not going to tell me everything, if you're not going to let me into every part of your life, then that means that you don't want me to be involved. Like family is supposed to tell each other everything.
Right.
Which like maybe if you're in a family that has emotional and psychological safety and trust.
And also even then, maybe.
Yeah, that's
Also you're not entitled to know all of the things about everyone all the time.
Exactly.
And so I think this was at some point in COVID. I learned a new definition for boundaries from Prentice Hemphill. If any of y'all are familiar, looks like Patrick maybe. They're a somatic practitioner and healer and an author and transformative justice educator. I guess I don't know if they would use that word, but they're a person that I follow a lot for kind of mindfulness things, and their definition of boundaries is the distance at which I can love me and you at the same time. And that was kind of, and I don't want to sound like hyperbolic, but really life-changing for me because it was so different from the definition of boundaries that I grew up with. That was like, okay, so I guess I'll just never have boundaries then. And so that is kind of the frame that I try to work with. And so like, I mean, really at the time of the Atlanta shootings, that highlighted a lot of things in my relationships for me that I just didn't want anymore. And then reflecting on those relationships, I just felt like I was putting a lot of time and energy into people and like gatherings and doing things that I just wasn't getting anything out of. And I also don't want to sound like I expect like all relationships to be one for one, like reciprocal in every way, but I just like kept putting in time to people that I just didn't get a lot back from. I didn't feel supported by them. I didn't feel heard by them. So those relationships are definitely different now. My circles are definitely a lot less white, to be honest, now. And also include many more adoptees now.
That's awesome.
Great.
Yeah, I love that quote and that understanding of boundaries. To me, it sounds appropriately bolic, not hyperbolic. Just because, I mean, like, even from me hearing that, I'm like, oh, that actually actively reframes my worldview and actively shapes how I want to engage with people. I mean, that's life-changing. For as long as I hold on to that idea and subscribe to that idea, especially, like, that will have changed my life. So, yeah, that's really wonderful. I'm curious because I have like nervousness around this. How did you go about shifting your circles from predominantly white peoples to predominantly, or maybe not predominantly, but like just less white people, and like feeling like you like in making those jumps? For me, I am always like, oh man, I've recently come into an understanding of being a person of color that still doesn't like imposter syndrome still like pops its head up sometimes. I'm like, well, I don't know if I should be here. What was that process like for you in terms of trying to find a new group of people, a new demographic of people to interact with and fill you up?
So I think my work had a huge impact on that. I started a new job in the pandemic. I work with an organization called Morton Group now, and I started with them part-time while I was still working a different full-time job, and kind of like easing into that. And then that turned into a full-time thing because it just was a place that is unlike any other workplace I've ever worked at. So we're a Chicago-based consulting group, and we provide a suite of organizational development services to all kinds of organizations across the country. And the way that we do our work is through or really rooted in racial equity. So we do like executive search and placement, strategic planning, and we're working with a lot of organizations that are still predominantly white, still led by middle-aged white guys. So being able to do that work but not be an employee at those companies, which I have been in the past, has been a really interesting experience. And just the team of folks that I work with are so incredibly generous and caring in a way that I think I learned what care could be in a different way. I mean, care without strings attached, really, is what it is. And so just being around this group of people who are so dedicated to the work and who are actively, like I can see and I've experienced, are actively doing their own personal work. Like we're all doing our own kind of shadow work, is what some folks call it. The work of like recognizing our own biases and, holding each other accountable, and recognizing where we've caused harm ourselves and working to not do that at the interpersonal level with each other in a space that feels so safe, has really, I think, made it easier for me to have those conversations. Not that they are at all easy still, but like I have language now, and like I get to practice it, like kind of practice it at work because I can do it with people that I feel safe with. So that has been really healing in that way. And I also, when I'm talking about boundaries or like, people being in my life less or differently, I also don't believe that people are disposable. And so I really feel a responsibility to work at those relationships for myself and for like the world. Like I wouldn't be doing this work if I didn't believe that people could change, as long as we're alive. And I really believe that that's true. So that is kind of a motivator for me. And so I've just been having these conversations with folks, and like based on how that goes, like it's kind of join in or join out, I guess. But like this is where I'm at right now, and this is what I can and cannot invite into my life at this moment. That answers your question?
Awesome.
Great.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember what my question was, but that's great. I was just like, anytime you talk, I'm just like so into it. Yeah. I'm like, yeah, all right, whatever.
Yeah.
Just
I
like,
think it's really incredible when you find yourself in a space with people that are actively working on themselves when your circle has been so filled with people who think that they're already there. And the shift, the shift, like the atmospheric shift is I said incredible. It's like seismic. I don't know if that's a dumb metaphor, but it's like I feel the movement.
It might be a little
in my
hyperbolic.
body.
Try to be more bolic.
But I'm sorry. I feel the movement within me, like when I'm in the different spaces, because I have friends that from my old friend group that I'm still close with, like really close with, people that stood up with me at my wedding. And one of the hardest things has been to start having these conversations that I've just started to learn about in my own life as I work on myself with them. And, something that I feel very privileged about is that I've had people in my life from the before times, who were who have been willing to engage in that conversation. And like you talk about, Amanda, like you have the conversation and it's a gauge almost. Like you're like, this is where I am, and like let me see where you meet me at, and then maybe this is as far as we go for now. And I feel again really privileged to be able to do that, but also to know that there are other people out there that are actively working on themselves and like who are willing to sit and have the hard conversation, because it is hard to have the hard conversation even with a bunch of people who are doing it already and make it look easy. Like the people that just make it look like it's nothing, like to be so vulnerable when we know that it is for them too. Still, it's still hard. It's still difficult. But yeah, I don't know. That's just like, I think hearing you talk about finding that at work, it really just made me think about the shift that occurs when you first get yourself into those spaces, and then as you go and maybe find yourself back in those older spaces. So thank you for that.
And I also feel it's difficult, like you were saying, Patrick, with people that have been in your circle because they've been close friends with you, because you've had a relationship and you've had a history.
You got too much history.
Doing
for sure.
a pattern or something that has happened before, and then trying to shift that a little bit with either just your feelings, your what you've discovered, and is tough.
Right.
And I mean I've been very fortunate to have a lot of people come forward in my life that have said, I love what you're doing. And so that is what I like to hear. I don't want the the ones who question it in a different way, like that's the ones that I'm like, okay, so we're not there yet. So, but the ones who come forward and straight off just like, I love what you're doing. I totally, understand and listen and want to help and stuff like that. Those are the relationships that I find value in. So, yeah.
And I think too, like when you find that language, having a safe space to practice using it, I think is really important. And that's part of what sounds so wonderful about this group, your coworkers especially, is like if you are gaining new language, like it's hard as anyone who's older than maybe 8-year-old, maybe 10-year-old to like try on new language and see how it feels, because you don't want to look like a fool. And I think we all feel like that, and whether it's like an actual different language or just new ways of speaking, new manners of speaking. And that's something that I find I struggle with is like, I have all these new thoughts and I think I have these new ideas, but I've not spoken them, so they're not crystallized. I haven't spoken them, so they're not fully formed, but I don't have any safe spaces where I can like say something to be like, that's a little messed up, and people don't just immediately come for me.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so, yeah, I think just especially thinking about, with the thought experiments of like, okay, so my person that I'm close to is acting at me like this, and I think I want to try to approach it this way. Can we like talk about like how that conversation might go? Or even for you, if it's finding out that you're autistic and what that means, and maybe retconning part of your history or thinking critically about what that means going forward and how you interact with people. Yeah, I think that's like those spaces to practice with language, and those spaces to try out new ways of thinking and be like, okay, I want to like have a safe space where I can do this so that I can present well for myself, like who I want to be, and not appear like a fool, is really, really cool. So
I'll break off into a random comment here that I saw your cat walk by, and I swear Patrick did this and try to look around his microphone.
I
Is that what you did?
Yeah, I did look up
You did
around to try and get a better look at the cat, but gone.
I saw.
Couldn't see
That's
any
what I saw. I was
further
like,
over
"What
her
are you
shoulder.
looking at?" And then I saw the cat, and I was like,
She did not
both-
lean her camera in for me just to be able to look at her cat.
I mean, my cat's just right here.
Yeah, both Patrick and KJ have cats too,
My
and
cat
I
is
used to have a
outside.
cat.
Or not outside, but out.
You can just see the tail.
Yeah, I
you can
didn't even
just see
the
her
cat.
tail.
The camouflage cat.
I also did not see the cat.
I promise she's there. It's fine.
Well, didn't we actually have? We had another interview once where there was an animal in the back, and we didn't notice it was an animal or something for like the longest time. It's like,
What?
no.
Oh, maybe.
I think it was another cat
Um,
one. Anyways.
Yeah, but
So, sorry. Did you have something?
no, that's all. I
Okay,
I
great.
don't have anything else important because it's me.
Great. Here's another left turn. Amanda, thinking about. Actually, I don't want to go there.
Ooh, Now I want to know.
That's fine.
Yeah, now I wanna know.
No, it's fine. We might get there later, but I'm actually gonna keep it here. So when you started your story, you dropped that you were born in Pyeongtaek, and the way you said it, like, you sound like you studied Korean. Is that accurate?
I do.
Sounded
Ooh.
real
Nice.
good.
I feel
like
proud
that.
now.
What level of study, fluency, non-fluency are you with Korean?
Oh, okay. The cat is knocking things over now. So when I say I do study, it's like a real loose kind of studying.
Yeah,
that
you're
I'm
like,
doing.
I mean, I watch the occasional K-drama.
I'm obsessed with the K-dramas now.
Okay.
I have like Duolingo. I don't know. I have all the apps. Not that I use all of them. I took a couple of classes that were like a semester long. One not last December, not a month ago. So 2 Decembers ago, and then I did another one spring of last year. And that was great. And having like a person help me with pronunciation and like correct me and just like converse with is super helpful and something that I really need. But I just also don't love school. And that was a little too schooly for me.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So then I kind of just since then I've just been kind of like self-pacing it. But yeah, I do it pretty consistently. I just am working on volunteering with the Hana Center in Chicago, which supports a Korean community as well as I think other immigrant communities with different like social and cultural services and educational programs and stuff. And one of the things that they provide is ESL tutoring. So I'm working on volunteering with them in that space. It's like 12 hours of orientation that I have to go through. But my therapist actually suggested it as potentially like a cute way to connect with some Korean folks and potentially practice my Korean.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Sorry, I just I don't know if it's how you hit cute or just like the like hearing cute in that context. I was like, oh yeah, this is where the meet cute starts, and then you have a budding K-drama in your
I
life.
was just about to say, like the K-drama.
Exactly.
Yeah, it'll have like a dumb like half English name. That'll be great. That's really fun. That's cool. I haven't thought about trying to do ESL in my own Korean community, but maybe I should check that out.
You should.
Yeah, I'm thinking about it right now. So, okay, here's the question that I didn't want to go to, but I think
Now's the time.
I think it kind of relates in this. Like, what? No, this is the question before the question.
You're building it up.
What
too
made
much.
you decide to? It's not. It's just this is my brain out loud.
I get you.
Because I haven't hosted
Your monologue.
in a while, so I'm like, yeah. What made you decide to jump into Koreanness? Because if I remember correctly, you were like, no Korea, no Asia, really just any other continent when you were younger. So what was that shift caused by?
I think it was I had worked with a career coach it was around the time I was transitioning jobs, so 2019, summer of 2019, who really is amazing and brought up a lot of identity work for me as like, have you ever thought about this and this? And that was kind of where that was planted for me, I think. And then so I started getting more like looking for more Asian spaces. They just happened to all be East Asian spaces. Not that I was specifically looking for that. And I was like, oh, it's a little problematic. But so I found that, but I really didn't. I mean, I felt very alone in those spaces. I think I just wasn't ready for them at the time that I was approaching them. But a lot of like the connection in those groups I was finding was around like food and like having immigrant parents and having Asian parents and just the stuff that I still couldn't identify with.
Yeah.
I felt like. So that really led me to look more for adoptee spaces. And then I really think just around the time of the Atlanta shooting that I couldn't even articulate to you what why that happened, but then I was just like, Korean everything forever.
I'm never going back.
That's amazing. Yeah.
That's a standout moment of the entire Janchi show, I think. I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, Korean everything.
Yeah. I felt like we
forever.
transitioned from K-drama to anime, which I know is more Japanese, but just like, it was just like one of those flash cuts.
That's when Amanda does her special move, and her special move is called Korea everything.
And then you're running, and there's like a little like movement animation in the
amazing.
background. Yeah.
Amazing.
I really like that.
Yeah. Oh man, that's cool. I get that. I think that moment for me really highlighted, not just because I think COVID was like a journey into myself and thinking about my adoptee identity. I saw that you had met up with Patrick via Clubhouse, so we were all kind of like doing that, like adoptees on the internet, we can do this thing. And then Atlanta really highlighted for our community what it meant to be part of the greater Asian American diaspora and what it meant, Asian diaspora, I guess, but the Asian American community, and highlights certainly the things that make us different, but also the things that bring us together. And so I definitely understand that sentiment of like, oh, I'm digging in hard right now. That in the wake of our people's tragedy, like we're going to find things to celebrate and love and really be loud about, which I think is wonderful. So I'm curious, if you're cool getting into it, that's fine. If you don't want to, that's also fine. You mentioned in your form and also maybe in the podcast during the interview that you grew up in a Catholic home and grew up with white parents, and on your form you put a bunch of intersectional identities, which is incredible. But I'm curious specifically how it's been being an adoptee and doing all of this work, and also being queer, and how have those journeys mirrored each other or not mirrored each other, or yeah.
That is a great question.
Yep, good question.
That I haven't really thought about, I guess. I mean, for me, and I think that's hard for me to answer because, so like when I sought out a formal autism diagnosis last year, I 100% think self-diagnosis is a valid form of diagnosis. It was just something that I needed for me. And then at that point, so it was just kind of like a validation to get that. And then I found myself trying to like, or seeing all of these similarities and like, oh, is this an experience that I had because of autism, or is it because I'm a person of color, or is it because I was adopted? And I was wanting to like put these things into specific buckets. And I think for me, that is kind of what I'm feeling now. Like I don't know how to separate them, I guess, or to compare them. But for me, I think, and just like a more expansive idea of what queerness is also absolutely something that I've learned and feel kind of invited into from my colleagues as well. We're a very Black and brown organization, very, very queer. That's also, I think, why my experience here has been so completely different than all of the corporate places that I've worked before this. But so just like understanding that it can mean so many different things and what it meant for me previously, because I absolutely consider, I'm hesitating because I don't really identify, I guess, as disabled, but I don't know if that's like internalized ableism. I guess I would consider myself sometimes disabled. But anyway, so I had just a different idea of what like queerness could be. Oh, so I consider like disability justice very much tied to queerness and just like lack of equity, just not, in the way that, these communities are, and the harms that we've experienced and the ways that we're systemically just not cared for. So that, and just like in the way that I felt for so long, like I am an alien. Like there are so many social things that I just don't understand, and I do them because I know that I'm expected to do them, and because that allows me to like essentially pass in society, or like I'm more likely to be accepted if I'm like doing these things that feel extremely unnatural to me, but are just like accepted as a norm. And I'm so sorry. There are so many noises in my background right now. I'm having a really hard time concentrating.
No,
My
you're
cat's
That's
good.
okay.
going.
Your cat was
And
going
you-
after. You have two cats.
Another cat. I didn't know you had
Multiple
two cats.
Yeah,
Okay.
there's two of them, and it's getting close to dinner time. So they're
Oh.
like,
Yeah, there was a shooting,
Yeah.
a streak
Yeah.
across the
And that's
screen.
all
I
I
was
can
There
do
was a
right now.
confrontation that we witnessed.
incredible. I love it.
So sorry, distracted. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that that's lovely. I don't have a lot of like in my place of living, and also like most of the spaces that I have, I don't have the privilege of interacting with a lot of people in the queer community, but every time I do, and every moment of representation that I get to see, which obviously mostly is Hollywood, so it's like kind of like it's either like rose-colored glasses or like I don't know, it's a real opposite ends of the spectrum, I think. But for me, like not being queer and being like and trying to seek out that worldview and that way of being, like it sounds like it would be a really healing thing for you, and you can tell me if this resonates with you or not, but it sounds like it would be really healing because like I would think that part of being queer is just always being othered and learning to love yourself through that. And so like if you're feeling like I'm always I am an alien, this is just how I am, then finding yourself in and amongst queer folks would be like, then love that and celebrate that and feel joyful and wonderful about that because no one else is going to. So for me, like being disabled and some other like intersectional identities for myself, like even the simple acts of like watching Queer Eye is like very like there are certain moments in that show where I need someone that comes from an othered background and an othered walk of life to speak truth into my own life. And so I regularly think about, you know, when we talk about adoptees coming out of the fog, right? I've heard one adoptee extend that to coming out of the fog of whiteness. But for me, I think of coming out is the part that I fixate on, because there is a real coming out. And how then do you announce to a world who had certain expectations about who you are, no, I'm actually something different, and you're going to have to figure out how to deal with that, you know? And so whenever we have the privilege on the show of, or personally, but usually on the show, because we're talking about adoptee stuff too, I'm always curious about parallels between a queer person's journey in their identity, in that part of their identity, and an adoptee's journey. Because I think as an adoptee, as a cis-het adoptee, I have so much that I desperately need to learn from the queer community about how to do this wonderfully and well and gracefully, and figure out what it means to love myself and all those kinds of things. I think especially from a body point of view, from a queer person to a disabled person, figuring out like, yeah, what does it mean to love my body well? And what does it mean to celebrate who I am well? And those kinds of things. So yeah, I just, I'm really grateful that you're on the show, and I'm grateful for as much of your stories you've shared and all of your candor and wonderful vulnerability and honesty. And yeah, that's it for my questions at this point.
I wish I could
But
just
I'm gonna-
take KJ's answer. That was that was I think what I was kind of thinking, that the
Well, but-
othering is definitely a huge piece of it for me. And I don't know that
Yeah.
I even would have used the word queer had I not been working where I
Mm.
am, and understood that like it can be, that's why I feel the way that I feel, because I hold all of these identities that are not cared for by society, and that I have felt like, well, I don't know where I belong because it doesn't seem like it's here. And seeing that pattern in all of those, each of those communities and all the identities that I hold is, for me, what is that piece that kind of ties it all together.
Yeah. And I think for me, like the queer as a word, and as it's like being owned by that community, is just like, we exist in gray spaces. And like that's I think for the show, that's what we try to do is exist in gray spaces and be cool and celebrate gray spaces. And however many shades of gray there are, we're here to celebrate any and all of them. So yeah.
Agreed. KJ's a good talker, so we let him do all of the eloquent stuff.
Yeah,
And
I
then
typically
we
want
just
his
slide
answers
in.
too, though. So
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's it.
Yeah.
So we can jump into food now.
sure. Well, so we'll be
I'm
back.
following your lead.
Yeah, we'll be back.
Oh, yeah,
right
that's right.
after
I'm not the one.
This break. Bow. Welcome back to the Janchi Show.
That's saying
Welcome
it.
back to.
That is saying it.
No, it's not. I'm doing it again.
It's going right at the top.
Welcome back to the
It is.
Janchi Show food portion, where we are going to try something that I did not realize what it was until just now, because I can't read any of the Hangul on it. So we just had a great interview with Amanda Paul, and now we are going to break into these sticks, which I didn't know were sticks at the time. So
I mean, there's sticks
mean-
on the box.
there's sticks on the box, but the color is very blended, and then it's not even the stick that it could be fire if you think about it too, right? Like
Yeah.
little
Well,
fire
yeah.
wisps or something.
This one right here is a stick breaking off.
Yeah,
So
I
that's
see
how I
that
got sick.
now.
Look, sometimes our eyes don't work good, Patrick.
Well,
And
I'm
do you
just
notice
saying,
it-
I just looked right at it immediately.
Do you
That's
notice
like
it's
I'm
breaking
looking at it
off
right now.
right at the point where you're supposed to open it too?
I wonder if that was intentional.
I don't know, maybe,
Oh.
or
I
it's
hope
just
so.
a coincidence. But this
I
is
kind of like that. That's making me like
something
this.
by Hai Tai.
It's called
What is it? called?
Gunjamja. Wait,
Yeah,
Gungamja.
Amanda
Before we
says
got
that.
on here, oh yeah, go ahead.
She says that means baked
Gunjamja.
potato.
Yeah, Amanda told us this means baked potato before we got on here.
Well, I just found out that this little tabby thing, it says Tununkot, and I put it in Google Translator, and it means floating place, which is amazing. That's like
This piece right here.
because it's floating.
no, just this little like this tab
Yeah.
that you're supposed to use to open.
Yeah.
Okay.
Floating
The
place.
tab is called
Amazing.
floating place. Okay.
I
Yeah,
like it
that's
'cause
what
it's supposed
the
to be
hunger
floating up in
says.
the air so you can rip it
Interesting.
out.
Yeah,
But,
that's real cute.
What does the thing in red say at the top that's coming out of the word?
It says
Yeah.
속수이로 구웠다. I don't know what that means, but that's what it says.
Is grilled?
Mm.
I
Okay.
don't know.
Where's
I
our
don't have a
Google?
good vocabulary.
Let me bring
Mine
mine.
Stall
ripped
for
like
time,
it's
I'll
only
Google it.
supposed
Yeah, I was
to
gonna do
rip
it.
that much. And I just got to look at them. Just it's a viewing
I
box.
just had to smell it.
It didn't. It looks like it's only supposed to rip to that far on both sides. I hate it. All
Cool.
right, here we go. Let me in here.
Kuota.
Oh,
Okay.
I see. I understand.
Yeah, it just means grilled.
Can't hear you.
It means grilled with a grill.
Grilled with, oh, this part,
Grilled with the grill.
Yeah,
red banner.
because
part?
the first part, 속수이로, I was typing that in, it said with a grill. And then I got to the verb and it just said grilled. So I think it means grilled with a grill. Maybe not. I don't know.
Well,
That seems like the appropriate
Grilled
amount of
with a
redundancy.
grill.
That's enough Korean. We
yeah,
got to talk
there's
about the
zero
food.
English on here, so I'm going to open it up. So
It says Hai
I
Tai
was
in
just about
Roman
to say it says
characters.
Hai Tai.
okay, fine. Got a little bit, but yeah, it looks like the package is
Okay.
like the Pepero packaging kind of.
Wait, here's the problem with the packaging. I opened up the floating place. Oh, wait, maybe I didn't like open it long enough. Well,
Yeah, you got to rip it all the way around, not
yeah,
through the
I
viewing
didn't do
port.
that. So I was like, I just created a little peephole, but I opened it from the top to actually get them out, and then they're packaged inside of that. Come on, man! Like, how much packaging do you need? You're not going into space. You don't need to build a spaceship.
Respect
Not gonna
the
lie, these look
floating
like
place.
They might be children's snacks potentially,
I don't
and
know.
that's a fun chill. I mean, I would have played with this. I would have done something with it. I don't know if you can tell. I grew up in a small
Interesting.
farm
They look-
town that I was playing with small boxes like this as my fun time.
So they look like Pepero sticks, but yet not. They're like,
Oh, these are good.
I don't know. Oh,
They
really
kind of
crunchy.
remind me
Very
of
crunchy.
Wow.
the dunking sticks. Yes,
Dunky
with the
things.
cheese. Like you get
Not
the cheese.
Dunkaroos,
oh,
though,
and the
but,
chocolate,
like-
whatever. But the sticks of those.
Huh.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
That is
totally.
not what I expected.
Oh, real good.
It even smells like that. Does not taste
I'm a
like a
big
baked
old fan.
potato.
Yeah.
So don't know.
No, there's no baked potato in there. But it's got a good crunch. That's
Mm-hmm.
I will say, having now looked at the actual that the sticks on the box are very representative of what is in the package.
yeah.
Like, you could look at those and be like, those are cartoonish drawings of what the stick is. But no, very accurate.
Oh, Sarah's coming back
Very
for
accurate.
seconds.
Yeah, that's pretty good. I could eat more of these.
This honestly makes me want the cheese from those old dunking things.
Or some
Like,
cheese whiz.
honestly,
It's like cheese whiz.
Yeah, I was gonna say
Cheese
like maybe
whiz,
some
you
just
could
spray
put it
cheese.
across the,
Yeah,
the top of it.
Yeah.
It feels like an appropriately 90s snack.
Yep.
The only thing
Amazing.
is the can of that would engulf this tiny stick. Like,
True.
you got to have like a little, like, thin.
Yeah.
I
Like
don't
the
know.
diameter of the cheese whiz is actually probably thicker.
Yeah. It probably is.
Well, yeah, it's cheese whiz stuffed with this
Have you seen
kun kamja.
that video where the guy puts the cheese whiz inside the cracker and then just sprays it around and it just spits out the cheese whiz through the middle of the cracker?
No.
Yeah,
sounds
I'll
horrible.
send you that. It's an interesting video, but
I do feel like there's probably a stuffed version of this with some sort of flavoring in it. I mean, it seems like there's almost got to be. Like, this is
Well, I did
prime
see
for something like that.
There was like a purple potato version that I saw too.
oh, like an ube.
Ooh.
Potato.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. I'm gonna crunch this right in front of the microphone.
Oh, that's what I've been doing the entire time. Sorry.
I
Little
bet half our
mukbang.
listeners were like, yeah, do more of that. And the other half are like, please stop. I hate mouth sounds. I don't remember what that's called. Well, let's jump into ratings. I have a hunch as to what everyone's going to give, but
Yeah.
Amanda, why don't you kick us off? Rate it out of 5.
Baked potatoes.
How many baked potatoes do you give this
Yep.
kun kamja?
Ooh,
Like
even
a
your
one.
cat wants them. Cat's like, I hear something crunchy.
Me
I
too,
want
like
some.
them.
You like
I
baked
like salty
potatoes?
snacks.
I mean, I feel like it gets 0 potatoes. I'm not really getting a baked potato flavor out of it, but I like them.
Wow.
I really enjoy them.
you
I
can rate
really
it
like
whatever
a
you
good.
want.
I like a good crunchy snack. And I guess I'll give it. I give these a 5. I'd eat this entire tube that I have in front of me right now.
Oh, yeah.
Mhm.
I'm about to work my
I'm
way
about
through
to.
these.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I'm almost sad that there's not more.
Yeah. All right. Patrick.
I'm gonna give it a 5 as well. 5 asterisk, because I want to try the stuffed version or different flavored version of these. And then also, no, this is standalone. I'll give it a 5. No asterisk. 5,
All
no
right.
asterisk.
No caveat. I'm also. Wait. Nope. I'm giving it 4 3/4 because of the packaging. It's
All
not
right.
not
Wow.
happy about the packaging. That's a big deal
That
for
is
me,
a big
man.
deal
If I
for
have to
you.
work,
Yeah.
if I have to work hard to open your packaging,
It had
Forget it.
floating
I get it.
place right there. I mean, come on, what else
Yeah,
can you
but then
put
you have
on
to
there?
get into
Dude.
this bag.
look, I had to do this, and then
You
I
want
did
another
that,
sign at the
and then I
top
had
that
to do
says
this
not
business.
floating place? What?
I would
Come on.
say the inside bag is both recyclable and easy to tear. Oh, it also has a floating place right there. So that's real cute.
Whoops, didn't do that.
Well, mine came out. Yeah, see, mine opened like that.
So 4.85 for also
4.85.
recyclability.
4.85. The first 4.85
Yeah.
on the show, I think.
Yep, probably. All right, Nathan.
I don't know. I can't be that. I think it.
You can though.
I
You
can't.
can be
I'm
that
gonna give it.
critical.
I'm like with everyone else. This is great. 5 out of 5. Only thing that I would change is
Nope. See, that's not a 5 though.
is that maybe there'd be more than one package in this little tube.
Okay, I think that still qualifies for a 5.
That's the
I still call
That's
it
the
as a 5,
Oklahoma
right?
coming out.
I like them so
Yeah.
much
Like-
that I want more of them because this is just a tube, but there's only one package, and then there's like what 20 inside the package. Like I don't know, maybe put
he can't give it a 4 and say it's because I want more because there's
Yeah.
already like 600 in this little package, and he wants 2 packages of 600. That's 1,200. That's a
Yeah.
lot.
I want more. So I'll give it a 5.01. No, I don't know what that means, but I don't think that really works. But you know what I'm saying.
all right.
I like it.
The
5 out of
math is
5.
hard. Carry the 3. It all shakes out in the end.
But I can't give it
Exactly.
any. You know, I'm not going to take points off because it doesn't taste like a potato. I
mean,
just
I'm
think
still rating mine on a scale of potatoes, even though there's no
Really?
potato anything happening in here, except for maybe even these little bumps that are maybe supposed to look like
I don't know.
potatoes.
I can't even read the ingredients. I'll have to look the ingredients up. Maybe there's some potato flour in there or something. I don't know.
Or maybe they just do baked potatoes in a much simpler way than we do here, where we stack like a shit ton of stuff on top of it, so it's not really a potato anymore.
I would argue that this is a more difficult way of doing potatoes, because the way we do a potato is like, here's a potato, cut it in half, bake it, you're done, and then add some stuff on top. But this is like, no, you got to like take the potato and figure out a way to roll it, and then grill it with a grill, and then add a floating place, and then add another floating place, and then you can eat it. So.
Those last two have nothing to do with the potato part either.
They have everything to do. If your potato doesn't have a floating place, what even are you doing?
But I mean,
that's what I'm going to say.
To be fair, I can't think of ever making a baked potato on a grill. So, it's always.
Well, is it a baked potato if you're. I guess a grill is basically
potato.
baking. That's fine.
There is a cartoon TV show in there about a baked potato that lives in the floating place. I don't know what it is.
Coming
yet,
this fall on Cartoon Network's Adult Swim.
Janchi Show presents.
We're
Potato
baked
potato
man
man
now.
Floating baked potato man.
Amanda, thank you again so much for coming on the show. Is there a place I know we kind of briefly talked about it at the beginning.
That was off air.
Yeah, that was off air. Is there a place that people can contact you or
to shower you with praise?
Yes, contact you with the connection. How would you like people to, if at all?
Folks can find me if they're interested, I guess, on Instagram, because I have that now. And my handle is theamandashow.com.
The Amanda Show. Nice.
I was
amazing.
Very happy when I found that was available.
That's a good one to get. You got to start your own show now.
Yeah, exactly.
Do you want to spin off? Because actually, KJ is supposed to not even be here. He quit the show two episodes ago. So
that's true.
If you need, you can come on the Janchi Show. We can rebrand as the Amanda Show. We'll be your co-host, and you're the lead
KJ's
host.
kicked off. Well, there
KJ is not. Wow. KJ still edits the episodes though.
Right? Yeah. No, I'm
you're
still
off the show,
employed.
but you gotta do back end. So
that's fine. Contractually, I'm obligated to. That's incredible. Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's been a privilege. Listeners, go shower her with praise and affection. And also do that for us at Janchi Show on all the social platforms. And you can support the show by going to our website, janchishow.com/support. You can leave us a review and rating on iTunes and Spotify. You can send us an email at janchishow@justLikeMedia.com. And you can call in if you have a question or you want to practice some language. That number is 972-677-8867. If you missed it, back up.
Whoa, we have a number?
Yeah.
What's that number again?
Oh, yeah. You can, they can back up. Bounce back, if you will, like a tennis ball. I'm at KJ Relke, wherever I want to be found on the internet.
I'm Nowalk on Instagram.
And I am at Patrick in the World. Really quickly, KJ, I appreciate you ramping up your enthusiasm there at the end of our plugs, because you didn't really sound like you cared to share our stuff. You were just like, and you can just find
here's the list of all the places you can go.
I was like, man, maybe
it's because
really
I quit the show and I still keep showing up for this dang thing.
Go back to your
my contractual obligations.
Sorry to run us off course there, but yeah,
it's fine. Whatever.
I appreciate it.
Yes. Thank you again. Thank you, listeners. Thank you, everybody.
Until next week, Janchi Heyo.
Bye. Crunchy, crunchy.